and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena. So this week, I wanted to look at this issue that the right wing faces on a regular basis. Now, it's a common saying that reality has a left-wing bias, which means that from the right wing's perspective, they're constantly getting faced with things that contradict their worldview and make them feel small, pathetic, and insignificant, because they are, but when they want to feel strong, important, and cool. So what do when they're faced with a situation like this? Well, they turn to someone like Lauren Chen, who can try and put a spin on it to make them feel better about themselves. So I thought we could jump into a video from Lauren Chen, online right-wing pundit, who's going to talk about a new right-wing only dating app that someone is investing money in and hopefully bringing out. I say hopefully because it would be very funny, of course. Anyway, let's jump right in, shall we?
Hey, Lauren here. Let's talk about a new dating app that will cater specifically and exclusively to conservatives.
I just gotta say straight off the back, it's really annoying me that she's wearing a Beatles t-shirt. That is really annoying. As a massive Beatles fan, that really annoys me because she's an awful, extreme far-right winger, and the Beatles helped get a Labour government elected during their lifetimes. They helped campaign for Harold Wilson, who won an election in 1964 for the Labour Party, the leftist of parties in the UK. So I think they would probably find it absolutely disgusting that she was in any way associating herself with them, because her and her group of cohorts, the insane far-right neo-American fascist movement, stand for everything the Beatles stood against.
And how this has the left really angry for some reason, and whether it's even a good idea to begin with.
So this is kind of this interesting thing that the right likes to do, is talk about what the left is angry about. It's kind of like this weird straw man that they just love. They just can't get enough of it. Just creating an imaginary left-wing outrage mob that doesn't really exist. I mean, there are, of course, people who get upset about things, but what more often than not happens is that if you were to watch any of Lauren Chen's videos, you'd probably get the impression that the left-wing are just going around being angry about everything and angry about things that don't really matter, which isn't true. Obviously, you can get some lone crazy people out there, but generally it's completely made up. For the most part, it's completely made up. And the reason they do this is because they can't actually address the issues that the left bring up in general, because the right-wing perspective on the world is one which collapses under even the slightest scrutiny. And so what do? They create these sort of like fake dramas by just pretending that the left are upset about something when they're not. Why would the left care about this, about a right-wing only dating app? Why would they care? Who gives a shit? In fact, if anything, it's good for the left, because it means hopefully all of the right-wing weirdos will go onto that app and leave everyone else alone. And then it will mean you won't have to sift through a bunch of undateable, neurotic, insecure weirdos, you know?
So on this channel, we have done several videos talking about the state of modern dating, and specifically modern dating on dating apps. And long story short, it's not good.
Yeah, it's especially not good if you're a conservative, because in general, people don't want to date people who are completely insecure, kind of dumb, aggressive for no reason, entitled, and have the sort of relationship values of your grandfather, you know? That's generally not a very attractive prospect to most people. So if people admit to being conservative, they don't get a lot of dates, which has led to an interesting phenomena of that they're calling woke fishing, when conservatives have to pretend to be left-wing in order to attract, well, women for the most part, because most of these people are heterosexual males, let's be honest.
I have so many people in the comments just lamenting that they're single, yet they don't know where to go to find a person who actually shares their values and is not just some crazy feminist or male feminist or just otherwise degenerate.
Which is an interesting way of like spinning this, isn't it? Because that's not really accurate. What's actually happening is that in her comment section, she's got a bunch of losers who can't seem to find partners. That's what's happening because of their horrible views that people generally don't want to be around. You know, if someone's incredibly antisocial, in the sense of like they're homophobic, transphobic, sexist, you're not really going to want to be in a relationship with that person. I mean, Imagine if you are a single female, or perhaps you are a single female listening, and you think to yourself, okay, do I want to go out with a guy who thinks that women are human beings, or do I want to go out with a guy who sees women as earthen vessels for his seed? It's probably going to be the first one, would be my guess. It certainly is what would be my preference. I'd rather be seen as a human being with wants, needs, and just sort of their own personality and volition than like a sort of sperm donor in a pretty package. So unsurprisingly, a lot of Lauren Chen's audience who has these horrible views finding it quite difficult out there in the dating game. A lot of them are single, and that's quite funny. It's fun. It's funny. That's the only real hot take to have on this. Because being a right-wing nut job is both a crime, but also its own punishment.
Because it's true, it's hard to be single nowadays, but especially so if you are conservative and you want to start a family or just live traditionally in any way, shape, or form. And this brings us to the issue of conservative-focused dating apps. Now, there have been a couple of these that have come out over the years, and from what I understand, none of them have really been successful. I think with any type of alt tech, it's really hard to get a footing if you're focusing on a small market share.
Again, an unbelievably charitable spin on what's actually happening. In a sense, a dating app is kind of like a shop in that you have a product, and that product is single people. Now, if your product on your dating site, or on your dating app, is shit, and nobody wants that product, then you're not going to have a very good time as a business. And that's essentially what has happened with conservative dating apps. It's a very, very strange idea to create a conservative dating app, because it's sort of like going, okay, so we've got our supermarket, and in this supermarket, we've got all sorts of fruits and vegetables selling very well. We've got cheese, we've got meats, people love it. We've got pots of snot. And for some reason, our customers aren't wanting those pots of snot and are generally trying to avoid them. So here's an idea. How about we open a store that's just pots of snot? Well, I think it's going to have some difficulty is what's going to happen. It's not a particularly good business idea. And it's not one that's ever started because people think it's a good way to make money. And that's not any good way to run a business. Now, I also find it unbelievably ironic that here I am as a leftist, yet again, trying to explain to conservatives what is good business practice and what isn't.
But anyway, now Peter Thiel is throwing his money behind a new conservative-only dating app called The Right Stuff, and it's kind of funny because the left is really mad about this, as is displayed by this article in the Mary Sue.
Okay, so the premise here, her claim is that the left are mad about the right starting a right-wing only dating app. And so to back up that claim, she has here an article from the Mary Sue. So let's move aside her framing on it and see what the article from Mary Sue is actually saying, what the tone of it is more, what the intended tone of this Mary Sue article is.
Peter Thiel to launch conservative dating app because no one wants to date Republicans. It starts off by saying billionaire venture capitalist and enemy of the free press, Peter Thiel has had a busy few years, what with cozying up to Donald Trump and piecing out of the metaverse after its stock tanked. Now the authoritarian fanboy has set his sights on a conservative dating app. Thiel invested $1.5 million in The Right Stuff, an invite-only dating app catering to conservatives living in large progressive cities. The app will launch this summer in Washington, D.C. and looks to be modeled after Raya, only more depressing.
Now, I don't know about you, but to me, the tone of this article isn't one of like anger that this has happened. It's more like amusement. It's more like making fun of them for being kind of losers and pathetic. You know, and in a way, it's a kind of schadenfreude of enjoying the fact that really horrible people are also extremely pathetic to the point that you almost feel sorry for them, but then you remember how awful they are and that this is a result of them being awful. That to me is the tone. It's not left-wing people are angry about this as if they're angry that right-wingers are leaving. They're making fun of you guys because you can't get dates and that you're doing something mad by setting up a dating app specifically for undateable people. That's funny. It's not anger-making. And it's hilarious that this Peter Thiel douchebag is wasting money on it.
So we're not going to go through all of these parts of the article because that's not really the focus of this video, but I just find it funny how opposed to Peter Thiel this author is. She clearly sees him as some sort of demon that's working against democracy because I guess billionaire donors are only okay when they are left-wing. Hey, George Soros, how you doing?
Find me one, just one left-winger, and I'm not talking about some weird centrist Democrat nonsense. I'm talking about an actual left-winger who thinks that George Soros is a good guy and is okay with what he's doing. Just one single one. Otherwise, shut the fuck up about him, okay? Shut the fuck up, because nobody likes him, okay? We're not okay with it. We're not okay with the whole flipping shebang. So stop straw manning. God damn it.
Parler, Rumble, and Getter, those aren't platforms that are meant to exclude liberal or left-leaning voices. They're simply meant to provide a space where right-wingers can actually express themselves without censorship. That is not the same thing as saying we're only catering to conservatives, even though liberals might take it that way because apparently they can't stand to be on a platform where, conservatives can actually express their opinions.
For a start off, it's not just leftists that can't stand right-wingers expressing their disgusting, abhorrent opinions in public. It's everyone. No, everyone can't stand it. Nobody likes racism, nobody likes sexism, nobody likes homophobia, nobody likes fascism. They're not really welcome anywhere, so don't act like it's leftists. Nobody likes that. Second of all, those sites ban people all the time. Just type in the name of any of those sites and banned, and you'll find 10 people banned for various reasons. So they're not free speech zones. I mean, on some of them you can even get banned for criticizing Trump. No lie. So the idea that they're free speech centers is totally bonkers. So, what can we learn from this? Well, we can learn that, as I said before, the real world, real life, has a left-wing bias. The right wing are stuck in this funny position where their view of the world is constantly being, in a sense, attacked, eroded by the facts. And so they rely on pundits like Lauren Chen to sort of try and massage those facts into something that is a bit more favourable to them. In a sense, this is what you might call cope. You see, the true facts of this situation are that nobody wants to date right-wingers, and they're having a tough old time of doing so, because people don't just want to not date them, they just don't want to be around them at all. And so they kick them out of other places and make them unwelcome in other places, rightfully so. Because if as I've said several times, if you smear shit on the walls regularly, you're not going to be invited to the party. So they're like, F you, I'm going to start my own party with hookers and blackjack. And then they start their own party and nobody wants to go to that party. And so, because there's going to be shit on the walls, and it collapses. That's the reality of this situation. That's the cycle that keeps happening and is obviously happening. And everyone in their heart of hearts knows that that's what's happening. But they can't necessarily face that. That's a difficult thing to face. It's difficult facts to face that nobody wants you around because you're an awful person and you deserve that. That's tough. So what they do instead is they try and frame it in terms of cancel culture, that their free speech is being suppressed in these places, or that they're a kind of put upon minority who's suffering under the yoke of the actual minorities. Or, as she put forward in this case, tries to twist it into a story about the left getting angry that they're doing something, so they can feel sort of strong and powerful and like they're living rent-free in left-wingers' heads and so on. When what they've actually done is just rebranded mockery. The left is making fun of them, and they've tried to rebrand that as the left being triggered because that makes them feel better about themselves and about the situation that they're in. And that's all this is, really. So I hope you learned something from this episode and had, at bare minimum, a good laugh. Look after yourselves and each other. Hippie hyena out. Goodbye.